Welcome back to Startup Equity Basics. This is our last section, Section 7 on capitalization complications. This section will be a little longer than the others, and we're going to look at some of the complexities that can be added to the capitalization and the cap table. So, what are some of the complexities that we can add? First, we can add in the rights to acquire stock. These were the stock options, the warrants, the convertible notes. If we issue these, or options, warrants, or notes, we want to show them in the cap table. We want to express them. We can add in preferred stock. Once we have series of preferred stock that we've issued, we want to show that in the cap table. So let's start with an example using stock options. We're going to add stock options to the scenario we did in the last section. In that section, we authorized 10 million shares of common stock. We had outstanding 5 million shares that were issued to 3 founders, and now we're going to add in the stock option plan. For the plan, we're going to set aside 1 million shares. So that would be expressed in the actual plan document that 1 million shares have been set aside to be used for grants of stock options. Given that, what does our company capitalization look like? And what's available for the board. Okay, so we'll start by looking first at the capitalization table. Now, you remember last time that we had our 3 founders, and the area that you see in the light blue in the upper left represents that cap table that we had from last time. What we've added this time, highlighted in red, is the option plan for 1 million shares, but we've also added a whole new column called fully diluted percent. So what is the fully diluted percent? This represents a worst case scenario in looking at the holdings or the percent of the company owned. So this treats all of the rights to acquire stock, and in our case it would treat all of the 1 million shares that are set aside under the option plan and could be granted and could be exercised as if in some future date they were in fact granted and exercised. So it's looking at a future worst case scenario where everything that's out there that's a right to acquire stock is exercised and part of the capitalization of the company. So when we add in the stock option plan, we look at, in looking at the treasury shares, or in looking rather at the shares that are available for the board to issue, we already have the issuance of 5 million shares outstanding. We now have reserved for the plan 1 million shares. What's left now is only 4 million shares available for the board. And on a fully diluted basis, our founders own 1/3, 1/3, and 1/6 of the stock. The plan is set aside 1/6 of the total. Okay, let's look at adding in Series A and see what effect that has. When we add in Series A, you remember that we have to do a separate authorization. New class, new preferred, we have to authorize. So in this example, we're going to assume we're authorizing 5 million shares of preferred, and we're designating all 5 million shares of preferred as Series A. So that's our new authorization for the preferred. What do we have outstanding? Let's assume of the 5 million shares preferred that we authorized, we have sold 2.5 million. So we have outstanding Series A at the current time, 2.5 million shares. We already have our 3 founders who have among them 5 million shares of common, and we have our stock option plan in which we set aside 1 million shares for grants. How much common stock do we need to authorize given this scenario, given this preferred? Remember last time we had authorized 10 million shares. Is that sufficient? The answer is no. 10 million shares is not enough. Why? Because Series A can convert to common. What does that mean? That means that we need to have in our authorized common a sufficient number of shares to cover the Series A conversion. And we need to think of those shares as reserved for the Series A conversion. What do we need to cover? We need to cover all of the preferred authorized. Even though it's not all issued yet, it could at some point be issued. And we need to have the common be able to cover all of the authorized preferred. So, what's the total common coverage needed? First of all, we obviously need to cover the 5 million outstanding. So we have to have enough authorized common to cover what we're issuing, or what has been issued, 5 million outstanding. We need to have enough common to cover the potential conversion of Series A, which is another 5 million, because we have 5 million Series A that's been authorized. Plus, we need to have enough common set aside to cover the 1 million shares that are reserved for grants under the plan. So this is a total of 11 million shares that we need to have as a minimum authorization for the common, just to cover everything that's committed. But if we only authorize 11 million shares, that will leave us with nothing extra. We could not even issue a single share of common. Everything's committed. And we usually like to have a little float, a little extra common floating around for issuances. Now, in the last scenario that we did, we had a total of 5 million shares that were outstanding and our 1 million shares that were reserved under the plan. So we were covering 6 million. That left us with 4 million as float. If we wanted the same 4 million float, that would require an authorization of 15 million shares of common. 11 that's kind of committed to everything we have going on here, and 4 million more available for the board to issue. What does our cap table look like with the Series A stock added in? Okay, so again, the light blue area in the upper left is similar to what we had initially with our 3 founders, but notice that we added yet another new column called percent class for the Series A. So when we have more than one class of stock outstanding, we sometimes and will often want to represent it not only as the percent total outstanding, but also within each class, the percent holdings within each class. So within the class of common stock, we have the same capitalization that we had before for our 3 founders. But our total outstanding, of course, is much lower because we have more outstanding stock. Series A has been added to the total outstanding, and so as a total outstanding percent, the founders own less of the total outstanding because of the Series A, which has been added. And we have our fully diluted percent. In this scenario, with 5 million common outstanding and 2.5 million Series A, the total outstanding is 7.5 million. So the Series A alone represents 1/3 of the total outstanding. Fully diluted total, including the plan, is 8.5 million shares. We're going to add one more complication, and that is a warrant to exercise for Series A warrant. So our authorized stock, 15 million shares of common, 5 million shares preferred, all of which are designated Series A. Outstanding stock, 5 million shares of common, 2.5 million shares of Series A. That hasn't changed since last time. Stock option plan, reserved 1 million shares, and the new kid on the block is the Series A warrant, which we're going to have issued or available for 500,000 shares. So this is a warrant that can be exercised for 500,000 shares of Series A. Does it affect our authorized stock in any way? No. Why? Because we have enough Series A to cover it. We have 5 million Series A that has been authorized, of which only 2.5 million are sold. So we have 2.5 million left. Of that 2.5 million left, we're going to reserve 500,000 for the Series A. We still have another 2 million left available. We haven't changed common coverage because we're still coming under the preferred total. Okay, so what does the company capitalization look like with all of this added in? And here is our cap table. So it's very similar to the table we had before. The light blue area representing our initial founders with just common stock. The darker blue area representing what we had last time when we added in the Series A outstanding. The only thing that's been added here is a warrant, and because a warrant is a right to acquire stock in the future, it is not outstanding stock right now, so the percent outstanding has not changed, the percent class has not changed. Those are identical to what we had before. We haven't changed outstanding stock. What we have changed is the fully diluted. When we add the warrant into the total of everything, it's now 9 million shares, and that has caused the fully diluted percent to be proportionately decreased. Okay, so what have we learned in this section? First of all, the fully diluted percent is a type of worst case scenario. It's looking at the capitalization not based on current outstanding, but based on the warrants and options and any other rights to acquire stock as if they were exercised in the future and became outstanding. So in that sense, it's looking at worst case dilution. Authorized preferred will affect the amount of authorized common needed because we need enough common to cover potential conversions of preferred. So whenever we add authorized preferred or increase authorized preferred, we have to take a look again at our common and determine if we have enough authorized common to cover that preferred. Cap table, when we're looking at ownership, has a whole bunch of different types of ways of slicing and dicing and looking at percent ownership. So percent of class is one way that we need to look at, percent of total outstanding, and percent fully diluted. Multiple ways to look at the ownership, all of which are important. And when an investor is looking at investing in the company, guess which way they look at it? Investors are always going to look at percent fully diluted and treat the company's ownership with all of these rights as if exercised. Okay, that concludes section 7. I hope you have found this useful. We are preparing, or have prepared at the time you're listening to this, several other courses in topics that are related to what we covered in the basic course. These will take much more deeper, in-depth look at these items. So stock options, convertible equity. We were looking at a course in pre-money, post-money equity analysis. Preferred stock attributes, and that is related to venture capital financings. And finally, a course covering waterfall analysis and the distributions on an acquisition. If you are interested in any of the topics, you will want to look at these courses, which either are or will be available in the future. Thank you. I hope you have enjoyed Startup Equity Basics, and I look forward to seeing you in our future courses.